Welcome, everyone. We are so glad that you are here joining us, and I'm very excited to introduce our guest, Susan Aposhian, who has been working in the field of embodiment and meditation and psychology and yoga and body work and so much really essential to the summit since the 1970s. She's really been just a groundbreaking, fundamental presence in the world of embodiment. And she's the creator of body-mind psychotherapy. After her second book, Body-Mind Psychotherapy, Principles, Techniques, and Practical Applications came out, she began to incorporate spirituality as central to her work. And that's really the central focus of her latest book, Heart Open, Body Awake, the 4 Steps of Embodied Spirituality, which will be some of what we get to dive into today. So Susan, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here with you.
I'm so happy to be here with you too. I want to share with our audience just a little bit of how we met. So I initially met Susan in 1996, and I was drawn to move here to Boulder, Colorado to attend the Naropa's program in body psychotherapy in 96 after I had had my own experience being introduced to body-mind centering. I was in college at the time. You may know Andrea Olson. And I figured you would. And she came to where I was in undergrad and led us through this embodied experience through body-mind centering. And I was 21 at the time and somewhat struggling with my own dissociation and my own trauma history, my own struggles with embodiment. And this workshop opened something for me very essential, both a lot of raw emotionality, but also a felt sense experience of what integration might feel like and what was possible. And I just wanted more. And so when I met you, actually probably the year before I started studying with you, I came out to visit Naropa, and I knew that this was the place that I could deepen into my own embodiment journey, as well as learn to offer this for others. So I'd love to kind of roll back the tape a little bit and just have you share a little bit, Susan, about your history with embodiment and somatic psychology.
Thank you. Yes, I'd love to. So I've been realizing lately, I never used to say this, but I realized when I first started embodiment practice. So embodiment practice is a discipline that I developed training people in body-mind psychotherapy. And I can't remember when I started calling it embodiment practice. It might have been after your time in 96. I think I called it natural movement in the 90s. But my first experience of embodiment practice was I was a teenager. And we had had a terrible tragedy in my family. We lost my mother when she was quite young. And my father took my brother and I on a road trip. It's a crazy Armenian American response to trauma and loss. So we're on a road trip and we're just driving around, and we stopped for lunch, I think, at a little inn, I think like Vermont or New Hampshire. And we get out of the car and we had to cross like a 2-lane highway. And, there was probably nobody there, but I mean, this was 1974, maybe 75. And I was trying to help my brother, because we were both pretty dissociated, and we're walking across the street, and I go, we can do whatever we want right now. And I just kind of started like moving my body in this crazy way, walking across the street, and there was a an exhibitionistic quality to it. It's like nobody can stop me from expressing what's in my body right now, which, in 75, I think it was I don't know, maybe 70, late 74, early 75, it was winter. That wasn't really something we were doing. Even in the theater dance world, we weren't really doing that. And I realize now, there's just this in the last couple of years, that was the beginning of embodiment practice as I experience it. So that was the beginning. And then I studied psychology. Psychology was the family business. Everybody in my family, 3 generations of psychologists. But I wasn't happy with psychology in the 70s because we were looking at the elitist authoritarian aspect of psychology then. And it was, very much a psychoanalytic model and, listening silently and not disclosing anything and, very occasionally offering an interpretation, which I experienced as politically off to me. So I was also studying dance when I was in college. And so then I tried to study dance therapy, and that didn't seem to really be rectifying, the issues that I was concerned about. And so I studied body-mind centering. I met Bonnie in 1979. I had been avoiding her for a couple years. She was very known in the contemporary new dance world because that's the world she came out of. And I'd been avoiding her because I knew it was going to derail me. And I was, trying to do a degree in dance therapy. I was working as a dance therapist. I'd worked as a dance therapist with my BA because they didn't have master's degrees then. So, I had a bachelor in psychology and dance. And so they hired me to do dance therapy in Alameda County. Yeah. And I was just making it up in the schools.
Susan, if I may interject for just a second, I'm loving where the story started. The story of we can do whatever we want right now. It almost to me feels like the kind of quintessential statement of my experience of you in this field is that, if I may put it boldly, you're a bit of a renegade. Like, you're willing to challenge the status quo, and you're willing to bring in this understanding that we don't have to stay in the lanes where, you are so willing to transcend and explore the boundary of where the kind of intellectual understanding of embodiment actually meets the reality of embodiment. I know there's so much more about your history that will even reveal this and embellish upon it, but I'd love to just kind of hold that together for a moment.
Yeah. And also, Arielle, you were talking about embodiment, but most people don't, right? Most people in the somatic psychology world, body psychotherapy world, they're not really interested in embodiment. Or if they use that term, it's not what I think we're both meaning about it at this moment. You can do whatever you want. I mean, that's an adolescent iteration of that. But really, for me, the deepest part is going back to our animal roots, recognizing that we are animals, and we have all the instincts, drives, and abilities of animals, but we've neglected them or repressed them, that they've gotten a little weird and wonky in most of us. And we're also, deeply, deeply rooted in the hunting and gathering lifestyle. Depending on where you start, if you start with hominids, we've been doing hunting and gathering for millions of years. Is that too much? Hundreds of thousands of years, at least. And then this thing we called civilization is 10,000 or less years old, depending on our ancestry. I mean, there are hunters and gatherers on this planet right now still. They're deeply, deeply confined. But so 10,000 years to, I think it's safe to say 400,000, that human beings have been hunting and gathering.
So I have a question for you. How do you experience that hunter-gatherer legacy to have shaped our embodiment?
It's shaped everything about us. It shaped our whole genetic profile. Our genes have not visibly, I just lost the word. What do genes do? They evolve.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't evolved visibly since in these 10,000 years. Mm-hmm. So the hunting and gathering lifestyle is our biological template, our roots mutate. We haven't significantly mutated or evolved since then. Mm. So we are animals, we are hunter-gatherers. This intellect, all of our cognitive abilities was shaped hunting and gathering, watching the patterns of animals, watching the patterns of the season, of the environment, the water flow, the sun rising and setting. Everything we do on the internet, intellectually, philosophically, spiritually, is all templated upon that.
When you guide embodiment as a practice, what do you feel like are some of the key elements that help someone reorganize or just arrive in relationship to our own embodied experience?
Well, we've distorted that legacy, the animal legacy and the hunting and gathering legacy, intensely, right? We've repressed it, we've suppressed it, and we've dissociated from it. And we've twisted ourselves neurologically, physically, emotionally into a very strange way of life. Here we are.
Yeah.
Talking electronically. So we met in 95. So we've known each other almost 30 years. For some of those years, we would see each other daily. A number of those years. For some of those years, we saw each other weekly. And now we haven't seen each other maybe in 5 years, I don't know.
Yeah. I also think about all of the years that we moved together in a space or sang together in spaces, that there's something about the shared experience of being two bodies in a space together, relating underneath all of the words.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very powerful. I think that's an important point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So most of those years that we saw each other daily or weekly, we were moving and singing.
Yeah. I'm reflecting upon some of the early experiences I had. I think at the time you were calling it uh, natural. Um,
Natural movement. I have a picture. If you're in my first book, do you remember that?
of course, I have a copy on my shelf.
Oh, here you are.
Oh, I love that. Not much has changed. I'm still in touch with Robin.
Yeah.
What I loved about those early years is that as you were guiding us, and I believe in many ways this is still what you do, is that so much was, in a sense, getting us out of the inhibiting elements, like actually freeing up what that which was instinctual that we could free up and allow for rather than try and control the movement. So a lot of the things you would say would be, let your voice go, let yourself move in any way that feels natural or comfortable for you. Move toward the sensation. And I'll pause there and allow you to take over.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't think that there's anything I do that's encouraging further mental constructs on top of our direct experience. I might be supporting a refinement. I might support a way of thinking about ourselves that might be more conducive to allowing bottom up instinct intelligence. So this first book is called Natural Intelligence. So how do we allow our natural intelligence, our bottom up intelligence, the intelligence of our bodies, the intelligence of our cells, how do we let that sequence into our thinking so that our thinking reflects it and supports it and then can enhance it rather than distort and inhibit?
This would be a beautiful place to segue right into a practice. I think we can talk about it, but if we have an experience, and of course, our viewers, if you can have this experience, I think it'll make a lot more sense. We'll come into our senses together. How about that?
That sounds great.
Great.
Good. So get comfortable wherever you like. You don't have to sit in the chair. You don't have to see the screen. If I want to show you something, I'll let you know. I'll say, you might want to look at me for a moment here. So lay down, stand up, walk around your room. But if you prefer to sit, great. But just get comfortable. Listen to your body. So, the whole point of embodiment practice is to be kind enough to yourself, to give yourself an opportunity to let what really wants to happen deep inside you to come out. Yeah, just think about that and see if you get a breath shift there. Not making a breath shift, allowing a breath shift. Thinking about being kind. If most of our listeners are like most of the modern world, you're exhausted, you're overextended, and your nervous system is overstimulated, which makes it continue to crave stimulus, right? When we're overstimulated, we crave further stimuli. The nervous system would rather keep doing what it's already doing than shift. because so much of our nervous system is predicated on safety and scanning for danger. So when we're overstimulated, we're also noticing that we're okay. I'm exhausted, totally overstimulated right now. But my nervous system is noting, but you know what? I'm doing okay. I can talk. I'm not sick. I'm not falling asleep. And so, because it's okay, then our nervous system wants to stick with it. It's a known, safe place. Yeah. So, what we're talking about here with embodiment practice is to soften into ourselves, to listen to our breath, to release our breath. And it might help to part your lips and part your teeth and just feel if you get a shift in your breath. So you're not controlling the breath from the top down. You're not telling your breath what to do. You're not pushing the out breath. You're not pulling the in breath. You're just allowing. Oh, and just saying that word allowing gives me a release of my breath. Again, it's from the controlled, known safety zone. Good. Letting go of your breath and letting go of your position. Feeling if anything wants to move or breathe. Ah, sound or speak. Oh, yeah. Feeling if your breath and your awareness can reach deep inside you, into your throat, into your heart, into your belly. Ah, yeah, that's good. And just saying, hi, everybody. I know I've been pushing you so hard. I'm so sorry. We can let down now. We can take the rest of this recording to relax and let down. And if that's all you remember from this recording, I think that's the most valuable thing you could get from hours and hours of studying somatic psychology. Let down, let go, release what's happening inside you. So that was a few minutes. And, you could do this again. I don't know how long you'll own this recording, but you could go back to these few minutes and maybe Shift can even highlight this practice or pull it out for you so you could practice. And slowly over time, your attention span for your own embodiment will increase. And your depth of ability to go into yourself more deeply and excavate more vitality and truth and creativity and love from deep in your being that's been barricaded off. I've been doing this literally for 50 years, and I discover new things in myself most months at least.
It speaks to the kind of never-ending journey of embodiment, doesn't it?
Yeah, and the never-ending journey of human development.
That's true. And I love too that in a sense, we in our willingness to show up for ourselves as we are also participating in a certain kind of evolution of the species.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad you said that, because that's all I think about right now. You know, I'm so personally distraught, concerned about everything that's happening in the human species right now on this planet, and how we're destroying the planet because we don't know how to be, and we don't know how to be together. So all I care about right now is evolving myself and supporting other people to evolve themselves if they want to, and praying to all that is, that somehow this will take us to the next level.
You know, what struck me, and, you know, perhaps you were just guiding me so personally in that embodiment practice, but of course I've recognized how relevant it is to so many of us, but the deep state of exhaustion and overstimulation that then craves more of the same state. And I often think of that phrase that we can't solve the problem from the same state of mind that created it. And the felt experience of the willingness to suspend that craving for more stimulation, the willingness to go in and to just soften and allow for the jaw to release, the tongue to soften. I could feel it in my palate. I could feel it in my face. Exactly. And I can feel the moistening in my eyes, right? Like this softness that comes back forth of the kind of warmth of compassion as a felt experience, not a set of words. Um, and that, I feel like, is what you're speaking to, that in this deep prayer of how do we evolve, if we can have that for ourselves and that felt experience, we show up differently with each other.
Absolutely. And I just love doing this with you. And, you know, I just feel like we're, you know, firing back and forth on the same pathway into a compassionate universe. I mean, that's where we want to live, right? That's who we want to be. We want to be truly compassionate. I spent this last weekend teaching at a retreat on wise compassion, navigating dark times with a courageous heart. Yeah. And it's what we're all thinking about, right? It's what we're all wanting. And the courage it takes to drop down out of just thinking about it into the felt sense, into the warm heartness of it. And the fear that blocks so many of our well-intentioned conversations from getting there. So I'm so grateful to you, and you're starting to cry, and now I'm going to start crying. And how beautiful is that?
So true. Yeah. You spoke earlier about, you know, humans also destroying our planet, let alone each other. And, you know, sometimes for me, there's this experience, especially in relationship to the natural world, of being so deeply moved, like so just deeply brought to my knees in the beauty of this world. We have the honor to, you know, to be in, to be part of. Yeah.
Yeah. And that, I don't think an accident,
Mm.
right? I think the earth is teaching us so much about peace and beauty and love and interdependency. And what I've just been so amazed at in this last year of unending climate crises is that there's so much beauty, even still.
Isn't that true?
Yeah. And the same thing with all of our human confusion and aggression towards each other and warfare and armed conflict. I looked up last week, there were 32 wars and major armed conflicts going on our planet last week.
Wow.
Yeah.
That kind of, oh, oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then to be simultaneously teaching about how to sustain and maintain an open heart in the face of that kind of darkness, that kind of intensity.
Yeah. And how to be loving with each other, because it's so easy to blame each other and to say, well, you did this to me. And why aren't you doing more to fix this? And then the other person says, well, you did this to me. And why aren't you doing these things to fix it? And then your ancestors, did to my ancestors. And, and trying to own land, that they say in anthropology that's when we started fighting each other. I mean, of course, there were little conflicts, but when we really started battles and wars was when we could hoard enough food so that somebody could think, well, that could be fun. I could go take their food. And then, I'd show how dominant I was over them. And then when we settled, it's like, well, maybe we should go take over their settlement. And surely we can evolve to the place where we can respect the land and respect each other and not make it so much about ownership and so much about then conflict around ownership. I mean, I don't know how to get from A to Z. I don't know anything politically or environmentally that feels very substantial right now. I don't think any of us do, which is the problem. So I just come back to my own body, my own embodiment practice, my own embodied meditation, my own prayers, my own learning from the earth, as you say, being brought to your knees, and my own learning from other humans,
That's such a key piece, right? Like, it's not that we're coming as a fixed form when we come into relationship. When we are open to learning from another person, or maybe even not learning, but we're open to actually being changed by each other. Therefore, we become something more than you and me. We become something that now is together evolving. Perhaps that is what I appreciate so much about our nearly 30 years of knowing each other, is there is no question that who you are and your commitment on this planet, whether we've been in direct contact every day or whether it's been a few years in between, who you are has shaped me significantly and continues to do so.
Thank you, honey.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. And I appreciate where you're taking this conversation. You said learning, changing, transforming together, right? And I don't know if you remember from when you studied body mind psychotherapy, I always say we're not here for another. We're here with. And then there's this piece of circular attunement. I don't know if you ever, if that was before your time, you remember that. Yeah. Yeah. So the circular attunement, Arielle and I are doing this right now. You can't see both of us at the same time, but we can see each other. And so I'm letting all my sensations and emotions and tears and awareness move through my body as they do. And I'm seeing this beautiful person that I love and her beautiful smile. And it comes right into my heart like this. And then I let it move through all of my body. And I feel you through the screen. And now I'm thinking about all our listeners and feeling for all of you through the screen and saying, yes, we could only do this together. This evolution, this change we're trying to make will not happen without feeling this global humanity, the mind of the human species that lives in this most beautiful planet that we know of. This planet with oceans and trees and snow and glaciers and tropical fruit dripping off the trees. I mean, my God. That circular attunement.
Susan, as I experience this, one question I have, and it's a very personal one, but I have a feeling it'll be relevant to our listeners too. You said something really important, which is that you allow all of this in and you allow it to move all the way through. Sometimes what happens for me is I allow it all in and it gets really stuck. I feel so much and it gets caught and I don't know how to move it out sometimes. Just your mirroring me right now reminds me that you go toward the stuckness, of course, but it's so freaking uncomfortable sometimes. But maybe just kind of lean in for a moment of how we move stuck.
Well, stuck doesn't happen in a moment, right? Stuck happens over time. So if I feel this love I have for you come in like this, and then it starts to come up to my throat, and I stop at this moment, then I can say, oh no, honey, let that go through. And it just comes out. So, there's a technology in body mind psychotherapy that addresses this. We used to call it the endpoints, and now we call it the portals, right? So face, hands, pelvic floor, and feet. These parts of the body with free ends of the skeleton, the tip of our nose, the tip of our tail, our coccyx, fingers, toes, palms, soles of the feet, crown of the skull. All of these parts that we keep checking in with, parting our lips, parting our lips. That's the most important one for the throat release. It's got to come out of the mouth. Our throats constrict largely because we're so confused between our hearts and our brains. And our brains want to have, censorship power over everything that's coming up from our hearts. Our brains do not want to just let our hearts speak freely. So it's a practice with all of the portals to just keep them flowing, both so that we can express and release, but also so we can give and receive.
I can already feel the movement in me as I'm reminded, as you're reminding us of these endpoints and portals, which I love the new name. Oh my goodness. And and again, you can probably see there's some tears and some real tenderness in me as we lean into this and give space. You said something so key that really resonated. It was stuck, it doesn't happen in a moment, and really reminds me how much accumulated patterning I have, and all of us have, around where stuckness was a learned experience in relationship.
Amen, sister.
Mm.
So as Arielle was saying that, I was just really moving through our spines and, our vertebrae. So we have 24 true vertebrae, right? Each of them have 6 joints. There's a clue there. This is not a structure that's designed to be held still in any position. Any position that gets held in our spine is bad for us in every way, except for maintaining safety in an unsafe environment. Well, arguably, we live most of our lives in an unsafe environment. So, that's a very personal dialogue. What am I ready to give up in terms of the heldness in my being? And an experiment with embodied speech, embodied relationship, embodied listening, where I'm not sacrificing my own life force, core flow, embodiment, embodied presence, emotional truth for the culture. It's a colonization of the body. And the most privileged person on the planet has it in spades.
Yeah.
And, so from an embodiment point of view, I think the most privileged people are the ones that get to live closely to Indigenous people that are still living closely with the land, or, the Indigenous people themselves that can still live on the land. I met this woman this weekend at this retreat. She was an Aztec dance holder. I think that's how she said it. She was so fluid with English, Spanish, and her, all of her languages that, it was like being in a magical spell just hearing her talk. But I think she said Aztec dance holder. And she gave me this little piece of resin from a copal tree. I haven't had a chance to look up copal tree yet to see. I don't know, have I seen one? What do they look like? But she showed me literally 2 seconds of her dance, her traditional Aztec dance. And I started crying immediately. It was so powerful, so visceral, so profound. And for the next day and a half, I could show people something, and now I can't get close to it anymore. I've lost, whatever I received is gone. But, and this is a woman, who's going back and forth between the States and Mexico, and she doesn't have American papers. And I mean, she taught me so much. And she affected me so deeply.
Mm. Yeah. You said that the ability to be that close to the earth in a way that parallels the indigenous people's relationship to the earth is, in a sense, our brings us as close to privilege as in your book, right? It reminds me to ask you a bit more about embodied spirituality
Mm.
and kind of how you see that as something that we're evolving into, what that looks like.
I want to talk about that, but I just want to say, of course, I have to refine what I just said about privilege, because obviously I acknowledge, here I am inside, warm and fed, and, that's privilege. But up until perimenopause, basically, I used to tell my kids a lot, I'd rather live outside. I wish we could be living outside all the time. And they just thought I was crazy. But I really meant it. But then after perimenopause, I realized I can't keep myself alive outside all the time anymore. And it was a real question for me, like, is it really okay? I've raised my children. I'm not contributing that much to the world. Is it really okay to be taking all these resources? And what I came to is I don't feel it's my time to die. I don't feel it's my path to live in the wilderness. I feel like this is my path. Talking to people about embodiment is my path. And I'm definitely leaving a major footprint. I try to minimize my footprint as much as I can, but I'm leaving footprints. And it just now feels like a kindness of the earth and of my fellow people to take care of me in this way, to, that I can continue to live, even though I think I'm taking more than I'm giving. But, who knows? It's also subjective. So I just needed to say that before I talk about embodied spirituality, because it's different, right? It's different.
Yeah.
That's really more in the embodiment category. So I'm pulling out my book. So I've been a meditator since I was a teenager also. And it took me, this book, I started working on it after my second book. So that was in 2005. And it just came out 2021. So I literally took that many years to write this book. Heart open, body awake, 4 steps to embodied spirituality. And it, I didn't write it this way, but it's essentially a coming out story. It's me coming out of the closet. One of my students from, I think, before your time, I don't know if you know him, Chris Larson. Do you remember him? Yeah. Chris said to me, I said that it was a coming out story, and he said, no, this is what you've been doing the whole time. It's always been embodied spirituality. So, I was trying to be politically correct and respectful of all of the different fields that I've been involved in. But apparently it's been leaking out. And also my teacher, Bonnie Bainbridge Cohen, said the same thing to me. She said, this has always been your focus. So, but to me, I wrote it as it's like, just like, I don't have a definition of spirituality. I didn't have, I thought, well, you can't publish a book about something for which you don't have a definition. But I still don't. Now it's 2 years old. I still don't have a definition. I'm still working hard to understand the definition. What is this thing in humans that I think all of us have this drive toward Matthew Fox, who was kicked out of the Catholic Church for talking about spirituality in a too unorthodox way. He said the three qualities, I think I can do it: immensity, intensity, and intimacy. I'm going to say it again: immensity, intensity, and intimacy. I think it's in all of us, whether we pursue it or not, how we pursue it. Do we pursue it by trying to be good people, decent humans on the planet? Do we pursue it by something that's recognized as spiritual practice or a religion? I think it's in our bodies. So here's what I understand at this point. We are not isolated selves. We're interdependent. We are the universe. The first thing I heard probably in the 80s, you know, that song, Now I Walk in Beauty. Beauty is around me. Beauty is above me. Beauty is below me. And I heard a Native American teacher say each of us is the center of the universe, right? There is not a center. There's these things called beings that radiate this energy and consciousness. That's the center, each of us. And one of my Buddhist teachers said, space is kind because it accommodates everything. Yeah, just feel that all around you. Feel your body like we did a few minutes ago, and feel your heart, your literal physical heart at the center of your chest. I'm not talking about some like distinct feeling like you feel your fingernail when you touch your fingernail. No, it's just a warmth, a spreading, a presence. But it is your true physical heart. It's not metaphorical. Yeah, feel your body with your heart beating and pulsating inside it. The heart is the strongest pulsator, the strongest generator of electromagnetic and electrical frequencies in the body. And everything else in the body is also pulsating and generating a field of electromagnetic field, electrical field, and God knows what other kinds of fields that we don't have names for yet, right? And all those fields blend. Each brain center has its own rhythm and rate of pulsation, but it's far weaker than the heart. Each cell, each organ, each muscle, soften, open. And all of those blend and they ripple out from our center. And the earth is generating its own field, and it ripples out 360 degrees. Every centimeter of our planet is exuding its own field of love and awareness and consciousness. And they're all blending together, and they ripple out into space, and the universe itself is pulsating. And space is kind because it accommodates everything. And how could that be anything but love or God or truth?
Wow. Susan, I am so grateful.
Mm.
So grateful. And the felt experience of going from the personal to the interpersonal to this broadening out into that largest field that we all reside at the center of, and all of our individual universes collide and dance together, maybe the better word there. I'm also aware that we'll need to close our time somehow. And I was like, I don't know how, but I just want to say, wow, right? Like you've brought to me and to all of us a felt experience of awe. And perhaps that too is one of the most extraordinary emotions any of us can ever touch.
Yeah.
As we come to close, is there anything that you'd like to just share as a final sentence or two for us?
What I feel is that I love you.
Mm.
I'm so glad to spend an hour with you. And I just feel that all the love that all of the listeners, that we have for each other, that we have for our planet, if we can transmute our concern and our arguments into love and connection. And whatever we do, all I think about these days is to just be as present as I can and as kind as I can, moment to moment.
Oh, you brought that here and yourself here so fully. I am so just deeply honored to be your host and to feel this circle come back to a point of connection. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.